Hello and welcome to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. My name is Rich Natoli. I am your regular host of the show. And I'm going to be joined tonight by Bayside Dave. And we're going to talk some spring striper fishing. And I'm really looking forward to this one. This is one of those episodes that I've been really looking forward to because having Dave back on is just really cool. I just always learn a lot from him and had been hoping to get out fishing with him more often in the past, and only made it really once. And it was just a rough day, but I'm really looking forward to that. Want to thank everyone for coming back for week 2. The podcast episode from the first week is up online now. And you can see that on Spotify, Apple, whatever your favorite platform is. So go check that out. And I do want to remind everyone that this is now a sponsored podcast. So want to implore people to consider heading out to Great Bay Outfitters for anything kayak fishing related in and around the Great Bay area. Paul down there, the owner, is just a great guy. He's always supported this channel, and man, he has a great business. So if you're looking for anything, it is actually the shop that I use. I've used since the day that he opened. Literally was there on opening day. I don't know if I made the first purchase in the shop, but I made a purchase that morning right before I hit the water. Great place to go to. And then the other sponsor is my real estate business, Rich Natoli, Keller Williams. Based out of Collegeville in PA, but I can help you whether you're in the Collegeville area or not. Just reach out. So yeah, support your local sponsors and support local businesses. Even if it's not us, make sure that you are out there supporting the local businesses. We don't care about Walmart. We don't care about Dick's or any of those. It's the local guys that we need to support. So check out those local shops. Buy your rods from custom builders that are local, your plugs, all of that stuff. Anything that you can do that's more local than national or global, the better for everyone. That's what's really going to keep us going. So I want to say hello to those people that are already in the chat. Rob Widmeyer, got Great Bay Outfitters in there. Good to see you in there, Paul. James Flynn, Tad. Good to see you, Tad. I got to get on the water with you this year. It's been a while since I've seen you in person. It's been a while since we've been on the water, so let's figure that out. Everybody else, thank you for tuning in. We're not gonna spend a lot of time on anything except for the striped bass tonight. We're doing a little bit shorter streams than I have in the past. So with that said, I'm going to bring on Bayside Dave right now. Dave, welcome to the stream. Good to see you.
Hey, Rich. Good to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I mentioned this last week. Dave and I have kind of stayed in touch a little bit over the past year when I was off the water, and there were certain people that I just kind of, I followed anyway, but just kind of focused in on to try to live vicariously through while I wasn't able to go fishing. And you were one of them. Oh. And you had a different year last year than what I was used to. You were all over the place. You're hitting boats. You're on the sod a lot. Originally it was just all surf fishing, but you're all over the place now.
Yeah, I'm getting around, man. It's I'm discovering more and more areas to go fishing, and more and more opportunities are coming my way. Actually, being on the board of directors of the Village Harbor Fishing Club for the past few years, it's mostly boat fishermen. I got involved with them about 3 or 4 years ago from one of their members, who's actually the weighmaster. Excuse me. Where I was friendly with him, surf fishing with him for many years, and he kept bugging me, why don't you come to a meeting? And so long story short, started going to the meetings. They see what I do on Facebook and Instagram, and they never had a Facebook or Instagram. So they asked me to be on the board of directors and start running a social media program for them, which I did. I'm very happy to do. And we're starting to gain some ground and get some more members. But what I'm getting at is a lot of boat fishermen, they know who I am, and they want Bayside Dave to come out on their boats with them. So I'm doing a lot more boat fishing. And, some of the guys that I've become friendly with over the years through my Facebook group members, a couple of the guys are down in the Great Bay area off of where they live in Mystic Island area. Yeah. They all have like small little center consoles and stuff like that. And The one guy, Tommy Venom, we call him, Thomas Monaco. He's been fishing that area for like 30 years, and he's so locked into every little sod bank and creek and everything. So I really spent a lot of time with him over the last few years, not only on his boat, but he does a lot of land-based fishing off the sod banks and stuff. And being a surf fisherman, I don't have a lot of experience in all those back bay areas, and even up the Mullica River and up the Shark River and stuff like that, and a couple spots um, on the Toms River that I really didn't know about, just because I had never tried, and it's a lot of fun. Bringing that into my repertoire, if you want to call it, as far as targeting fish, man, year round almost now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's going to come in handy because right now it's not necessarily a striper bite, but you know what? Let's put that on hold for a second. I want to talk about the Derby because that's a
Oh,
big event for Long Beach Island, the surf fishing tournament, and it's something that you are heavily involved in. So, I want to take a moment. I talked about the local shops, right? I think it's really important, and being a small business owner, you kind of feel it. Um, you want to push everyone else towards small business, but a big part of what the challenge is right now is getting more new people into fishing and getting kids into fishing so that we have people that are fishing when we're older, or we're retiring out of fishing. Well, for me, if I'm dead, I'll be fishing up until that day. But
oh yeah.
we've had a big decrease in fishermen over the past couple decades, and this event is one of those that would be great, not only for experienced fishermen but also younger ones. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm a committee member of the Long Beach Island Surf Fishing Classic, which is basically a fall event, but we have sprouted out into a springtime. We call it the Spring Derby. Um, it actually started just this Saturday, where it opened up, and it runs through June 22nd, and it's a $20 registration fee. It's all land based, mostly surf fishing. You can fish off the jetties. You can fish off the Bayside. We have a lot of areas on the Bayside here on the island. We have 18 miles of island here, and on the Bayside, there's a few sod banks. We have some bulkheads. You can fish off the bridges, off of some of the where the dock areas are, where the marinas are, if you're allowed out there. And there's even some little piers that we have that go right out onto the bay. Bay fishing around here off of LBI is very productive all year round for almost every type of fish that we target in saltwater. They all run through the bays, and we have a lot of success, especially in the spring. Right opening day for the past, however many years that I've been down here, 12 years actually, we start getting striped bass right off of day one on March 1st in the bay here. A lot of the fishing, yeah, right off the bat is up in the rivers, but we like I said, we get a lot of good fish here off the bay. And, once the water starts warming up, then we start hitting the surf. And I tell you, the surf fishing around here is second to none in the springtime. And that's why we try to offer, a really good long derby for people to come down here. Even if you're down here for a weekend, just stop at one of the local bait and tackle shops. We have Fisherman's Headquarters just as you come on the island. Just a little bit north in Surf City, we have Surf City Bait and Tackle. And if you run down to the south end of the island in Beach Haven, we have Jingles Bait and Tackle. So, like I said, even if you're down here for a weekend or a couple times between now and June 22nd, just sign up for the Derby. It's $20. It's 100% payout. You catch some decent fish. We're going to pay the top 3 striped bass. And, the unfortunate thing about running derbies and tournaments these days, especially when you're giving prizes out for striped bass, is the slot limit. 28 to 31. How do you win? A 3-month long derby, which you can. It's not impossible, but it's very restrictive. So we are going to pay the top 3 as far as the slot fish are concerned, striped bass. And we also added bluefish a good few years ago. So we're only going to do the biggest bluefish, and we are expecting a good bluefish run again this year. Yeah. Last year it started kind of mid-May and ran into June, and some of the fish were pretty decent size. We had fish up to 14, 15 pounds, and but a lot of big schools of some of the smaller fish, 5, 6, 8 pounders, which are a lot of fun, as you all know. So we decided, let's just throw a bluefish in there, because it's something that people are targeting, and it's another prize that people can win. But we also added what we call as a Surf Master Award. We came up with that a couple years ago when the slot limit started restricting everything. We decided, well, let's give a prize to people who catch larger fish. Anything above 31 inches. So we open up a division where it's catch, photo, release. Obviously do exactly what it says. You catch a big fish, you have a tape measure, lay it down alongside the fish, line it up properly, of course from the jaw to the tail, take a good clear picture of it. Always include your registration number. In the spring, you get a registration number. So if you just write it on a card or even write it in the sand with your finger, as long as it's there, that's good. And in the fall, we give out badges, but that's another story. We're talking about the spring derby now. So that division, it's not going to be cash prizes. It's going to be
the gift certificates.
The gift certificates. Thank you. My mind went blank. Wow.
Yeah. All right, well, so that's okay.
For the Surf Master Award, it's going to be the largest striped bass entered into this catch, photo, and release. You get a $50 gift certificate to each of the bait and tackle shops. So that's $150 in gift certificates. This year, we were doing any fish over 31, and there were a lot of fish that were being turned in that were smaller than like the largest fish that's already been turned in. And we feel that that's not really healthy for striped bass to be handled as much as they're being handled just to get pictures taken. All right, the lead fish is 36 or 38 inches. Why are people still entering 32s, 31s? And that's not fair to the fish. So we decided, let's just make a number. Let's say any fish 38 or bigger. So we're not worrying about, keeping all those, fish from 31 to 38 inches out of the water for too long for taking pictures. You got to return those things back to the water as quickly as you can. Of course, revive them. But we decided let's give it a 38 or bigger. That way it's going to really get people psyched up. We got a lot of big fishermen out there, over the years who are always looking for the big 30s and the 40 pounders. So we're trying to attract those guys to come down and join this derby and possibly win a good set of gift certificates for these bait and tackle shops. And, that way you're not just, held down to the slot fish. At least we're going to give prizes for that as well. There's no anything special for the teenagers and the younger kids, like you were just talking about before, to try to get these more younger anglers involved. We do have special prizes for them in the fall. And we are working with the local high school fishing clubs, and we always try to give them free entry and free registrations for our derbies to get them directly involved. So we're really trying to push for that as well. And like you said, fishing in general has gone down as far as participation is concerned over the years. It's actually fishing and hunting over the years that we see a decline, and we're just trying to get it's not only trying to get younger people involved so that they at least get excited about a new sport that they're going to be involved in. That's not only great for the fishermen, but it's great for the industry. The industry is dying if the fishermen aren't showing up as much as they used to anymore. So this is basically for an industry helper, so to speak, just to keep people involved. And the local bait and tackle shops, are the ones who are dying quicker than some of the bigger shops, and you're not really saving much money by going to these bigger shops. I see a lot of the same prices, if not, sometimes they're even a little bit more expensive than some of the local shops. And when you're dealing with local shops, buying, all your tackle and bait and rods and all that stuff, you could always count on those guys to back you up and help with, service, with any kind of problems that you might have, that they can go directly to the manufacturers and speak up for you and help you get, what you need out of a product, as far as warranties and just general help and knowledge and pointers and, recommendations. You're not going to get that from the bigger shops. The smaller shops, they love teaching. They love giving recommendations. They're all very experienced. And these are the people you want to deal with when you're talking bait and tackle,
Yeah, I agree. And look, there's nothing like a local shop, in my opinion. And what people don't realize is, okay, so maybe you don't care about the fishing industry. Well, money comes in, and the money that goes to pay for the boat ramps and for the fishing piers and all of that, it comes indirectly from fishermen. So if people aren't fishing, you're not going to have as much money coming back into the resources, and the management of the resources. I mean, if we had more people, I would bet we'd have more people stalking the shorelines, as far as, game commission,
Yeah.
in certain states. So we're not watching people with garbage cans taking bluefish out, or throwing undersized tog into coolers in their trunk every time they catch one. We'd have more enforcement officers, which, look, I know a lot of people, they say they hate them, but at the end of the day, if you're a serious fisherman, you really can't, because if you're breaking the rules, well, I'll just say it. I really don't care about you. I don't give a shit. You don't like them, tough. I don't like you.
Yeah.
If you're breaking all the rules, but if you're a serious fisherman and you care about the fisheries, there's no concern with these guys. They're cool guys. They come. I've had fish measured, and I had a guy scope me out on binoculars down in Avalon. As soon as I got on shore, he was there. I mean, he came flying down. He's like, "I need to see that." I was like, "Go ahead." And he measured. He's like, "They're good." And I was like, "Yeah, I know they're good." He's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, I was looking through the binoculars and I saw this, and it didn't look right. It looked like you were hiding them. I'm like, "Yeah, it does look like that, but it was, what you didn't see is how it was on the stringer, and I was trying to keep it from getting caught underneath the boat." I was like, I could see how it was, but he was cool. And then, he went and helped out a kid that was having some trouble. He went up and helped him with his reel that was tangled. So,
right.
I don't know. I just think that all of that comes from fishermen. The more people that we have in the sport, the better off it is for everyone. I do want to throw up here on the screen real quick the website where they can get more information about it. So let me just grab that right here real quick. And the website, I think you can see it on there. Oh, you can't see it. It's lbisfc.com. Now that is, for those on YouTube, I believe I already have it up there on the YouTube. It's in the description of this live stream. So if you want to check it out, you can see it has all the information in there, that you can, check it all out, all the information, who's the sponsors and so on and so forth. You can go online and check that out. It's in the YouTube description. For those that are going to be listening to the podcast, if you're just listening to the audio, it's going to be in the description there as well. So on Spotify and everything, it should carry through to all of those different platforms once this is posted later in the week. So there, you can certainly get in there and check out the information for yourself.
Yeah, all the rules are in there, and as far as the catch, photo, and release, the rules are in there about that, and the website that you send the picture to is all there. Everything is. Everything that you need to know about the Derby is there, and there's even some history. There's some archives, and there's a lot to that website. But as far as just oh yeah, there you go. There's a live. If you keep scrolling down, that's basically the live. Leaderboard.
People let the weather get to them. They haven't weighed anything in yet.
No, not yet. It really hasn't. We really haven't had a lot of registrations yet. We usually get a lot more registrations as fish are being caught,
Right.
And I tell you, with all what goes on Facebook, Instagram, and all that stuff, I tell you, so many people just don't go out fishing. They look for reports, and then they chase reports. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I I just like using my experience, and I know my areas and my spots. And of course, you always hear from a friend or a colleague or down at the bait and tackle shop, what's been going on and stuff like that. So it's there's nothing wrong with getting information as to what's going on. But a lot of times I tell people, don't follow reports, don't chase reports, go out and make one.
Yeah.
Fish are out there, this whole idea, spot burning, you were on 15th Street and you told everyone, and I agree with that, only because there are so many people out there who are chasing reports. And if you caught a fish on 15th Street, you're going to get 80 people show up on 15th Street tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you really, and I kind of keep an eye on that with my Facebook group, Surf Fishing LBI with Bayside Dave. I got about 7,000 members now. And it's all fishing reports from LBI, but it's all general surf fishing information. Any kind of questions or information that you might want to find out about tackle, bait, tactics, anything about surf fishing is available on that Facebook page. And I have people from New York, Connecticut, Long Island, Pennsylvania, Maryland. It's all surf fishermen use my group for information. And I just started it out to promote fishing on LBI, and that's why I call it Surf Fishing LBI with Bayside Dave. And I only allow fishing reports from LBI, because if I allowed fishing reports from everywhere else, I'd be going out of my mind, because I personally have to approve of every single post that goes on my group. And so it's about all I can handle for the people. Once we start getting some good fishing reports down here, it's about all I can handle to monitor all that stuff. And people know not to spot burn. People know not to take a picture right in front of an area that people, oh my God, I know where that is. And I monitor all that stuff. And if somebody is a little out of line about where they exactly fished, or there's a picture that really, is going to tell too much of a story, I'll contact the person and say, listen, can you just please edit your post and I'll put it up. And it's been running really clean. I really don't have too much of that happening anymore. The first people weren't used to doing that. But now everyone is so into all that stuff. And there's no where'd you catch the fish? Oh, in the water. I don't allow any of that stuff, any of the wise ass comments and the ball busting and everything. I'll remove stuff like that. And I've even had to remove some people who are just downright nasty. And so it's a really clean group, and it's all people sharing information. It's not just me. You're asking me questions. I mean, there's, like I said, 7,000 anglers on that group, and there's a good amount of guys, about a couple dozen guys, who are very active in the group. And when questions are asked about whatever, they answer these questions and give advice and give recommendations and all that stuff. And I found that Facebook needed a group that does that specifically, and I've succeeded in giving that to Facebook followers, and I'm really happy with the way it's running right now.
Yeah, I love that group. There's a lot of great information. Even if you don't fish, even if you're not surf fishing, there's a lot of valuable information in there that does translate,
Absolutely.
And I do agree on the spot burning. You got to be really careful. And I try to be extremely careful with land-based spot burning, right? Because I look at it this way. If it's a kayak, I could probably point to 15 different spots that I could hit in one general area. So it's kind of tough to say that I really burned something.
Right.
But when you're on land, you can't reach 99% of the spots that are around. So you got to protect your fellow angler, as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of tough for me to give the best spots that you can reach by walking. There are some that I have given out in the past and will, but I'll tell you what, LBI has a ton of spots that you can reach by land on the bay side and on the front side. But the big thing is, for surf fishing, you can know it's 15th Street, but if you don't know how to read the water, you're not going to find them.
Yeah, and on this island here, and pretty much off of any beach area, surf area, the structure is pretty much very similar on the entire island. We have sandbars, troughs, holes, rips, cuts, and it all moves around according to what the ocean is doing as far as storms are concerned, and surges and currents and all that stuff. Sand moves, holes switch over, a sandbar will lengthen, a sandbar will shorten up. Once you learn how to read the water, as far as watching what the waves do and what the color of the water is, as far as where it's deeper, where it's shallow, once you learn to do that, it's not about, well, what town and what block were you catching fish, because you go there tomorrow and it's dead. 10 blocks down, or 20 blocks down, or on the other end of the island. It all depends on where the fish decide to feed, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and that's more true for the surf, right? I mean, surf, it depends on what you're fishing, right? You're fishing migration bass. Okay. There's a lot of hit and miss and luck in there. Some of the best striped bass anglers I know get skunked all the time after driving 60 miles at 3 a.m. because what they expected to be there passed through 10 minutes earlier.
yeah,
Or they ended up being 6 hours late because they're just moving up and down the coast. We had the backwaters, and you're talking about more non-migratory fish like fluke. You may not get a bite one day, but if you found the right structure, they're there. They're going to be there. You're not getting fish because they're gone, or you're not getting fish because they're gone in the middle of the summer. If you're fishing for fluke in a spot that should hold fluke, they're there. They're just not biting. But off the beach, in these migration patterns like we have right now, they actually might not be there unless you have some holdovers sitting in there.
Absolutely. And back to what you just said about, Back Bay and stuff like that, and rivers and everything like that, those structures, are basically the land structures, and you have your points, you have your bends and rivers, and you have, what the sod bank topographic is doing, and where all the depths are. They pretty much stay the same. And I've learned all that over the past few years, from my buddy Tommy, taking me around, saying, generally, this area, because of the way the current is running and the eddy that's formed and all that, is generally where you're going to find fish and all that stuff. And that doesn't really change, as much as I was saying about the surf and what storms can do to the surf and what currents can do to the surf, structures as far as sandbars, holes, rips, cuts, and all that stuff. That can change by the day. Not by the day, but that can change by the week, the month. I see it myself here living on LBI. I live 2 blocks from the beach, and here in Surf City, actually it's the whole island, but where I see on my block, I'll see a nice big hole, a nice big sandbar, some shallow area. So like there's a 3-block stretch of beautiful structure, and depending on what the tide is doing and the current is doing, will dictate where fish will be targeting and looking and digging and nosing around and whatever the case may be. But all of a sudden, after about a month or so of a couple storms come in, it all shifted a little bit north, or it all shifted a little bit south. It's the same. Maybe the hole's not as big, maybe the sandbar is not as long, but it's still there. So right. It's not generally my block. It's now 2 blocks down.
Right.
So the idea of reading that and understanding what is going on underneath the waves because of what you see on the top will tell you where to target these fish. And there's always, ideas of saying what conditions will dictate where you want to target fish. But fish don't read those reports. Fish right. will go wherever the hell, There's been so many times, and I'm sure you had the same thing happen to you, where how the heck did I catch this fish at dead low tide on a bright sunny day, 20 feet off the beach? I caught my largest striped bass off of LBI in a situation just like that. It was like June 12th. 8 o'clock in the morning. It was beautiful sunny. There was hardly any wind, hardly any waves. It was dead low tide. I had just gone down to the surf to meet a photographer who wanted to take some pictures. She's writing a book, blah, 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 about the area. And I'm like, well, let me just at least get set up with my bait and my rods and all that stuff. So I put a piece of salted clam on a hook and just threw it out into the surf, probably in the middle of the trough, not many waves and everything like that. God damn, what was it? A 47-inch bass hit that hook so damn hard and went for a ride. I brought that thing in. I was shaking. I was like, but
Yeah.
all the reports I've written and all the books I've read and all the stuff that I've talked to about experienced anglers, that should not have happened.
Right.
So basically get out there and just put the time in, and get your hook in the water, because fish swim, man. They're going to poke around wherever they feel they're going to poke around.
It's funny. I caught 2 fish in an area. I was fishing with my buddy Randy, and we were down in the Chesapeake. Actually, we weren't in the Chesapeake. We were in the Y River, leading into the Chesapeake. So you're talking like barely salt, right?
Yeah.
Spanish mackerel, nice size one. Nailed a Spanish mackerel in 40 feet of water in a channel in the river. And this wasn't even down near the bay. This is like right where we launched. I mean, this is like fresh.
Yeah, it's like, why is that fish there?
Yeah, I was like, I don't get it. And I showed it to him. He's like, no way. He's like, what is that? I was like, it's a Spanish. Come over. And he came over. He was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And then later, another trip, same area, I caught a flounder in the river, all the way up. Like, I don't even know how it got there, right? And I wasn't expecting it, but I was like, I'm just going to bounce the bottom. Nothing's going on. We were between tides, and the water's not moving very much. So we're just sitting there, and as I'm watching a snake swim across the river right by me, I'm like, oh, please don't come into this kayak. And all of a sudden I get hit, and I pull it up, and it's a small fluke, but I mean, it was a fluke. It was a summer flounder. So yeah, it's crazy where they just, come out of nowhere.
I mean, you're always better off, hitting the areas that are, statistically, prime. Yeah. Because, there are reasons for that.
But they also move in between those spots too.
Yes, they do.
They got to go across the non-structured areas sometimes to get to where they actually want to be when the tide shifts.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, as far as surf fishing with bait is concerned, I love the tip of the sandbar, because even though they like to run the troughs and nose around into the sand and maybe go off the sand, go along the sandbar to where the waves are crashing and pushing bait in their face, they have to get in there, and that's how they get in. They go in on the edge of the sandbar, and they swim around it and start running up the trough. And I put my bait right there, and sometimes I'm throwing plugs right there, where those waves are crashing, and I see that's the end of the sandbar. That's where I'm throwing my plugs, because that's kind of what they use as a navigational, kind of thing to see, like, well, there's the end of the sandbar, and there's the hole. That gives me enough room to swim around and get in there. And oh, there's Dave's bait. Bam.
Yeah.
And we all know that, but I know we originally want to talk about spring fishing.
Yeah, so I was going to say, like, right now, let's talk about, let's say it's, well, actually the weather, I don't know what the wind's going to be like tomorrow, but the weather's going to be a lot nicer tomorrow, if it's still cold. But if you're going out tomorrow and you could pick anywhere around LBI, where are you going? Are you going surf? Are you going side banks, docks? What are you looking for?
I'm definitely Bayside right now. There's nothing in the surf. We're not seeing much bait fish around, and but fish are in the bays. In the wintertime, the fish that aren't migrating are up in the rivers, or they just stay in the bay. But mostly they're upriver. Spring comes, water starts to warm up. It's getting into the 40s, so they're going to start coming down to where they feel there are bait fish. Bait fish always run in around the bays, of course, and they start running up the rivers. And so the fish are looking for bait fish to feed upon. So yeah, right now, earlier in the season, I would have gone up the rivers right away, maybe some of the sod banks in the back bays. But right now, we're catching fish right off the island here on the Bayside. A lot of people fish the bridge here, the Causeway Bridge. There's actually 3 bridges that come over the bay onto the island, and there's a good few spots on each side of each bridge that you can go. So even if you're just going to fish the bridge, it's not like you're sitting in one spot with everybody else. There's like 9 different spots on different parts of the bridges as you come over onto the island here. And if you look at Google Maps, you can see where we have sod banks. You can see where we have little beach areas. Bulkheads. I love fishing off bulkheads.
Yeah.
There are a few good bulkheads here on the island where we have channels that run right close by the bulkheads. And where those channels are running and where those currents are running with those channels, we get a lot of fish running those areas. And it's unfortunate this year. The bite really hasn't turned on, so to speak. The water temperature has stayed very low. It's not even up near 50 yet. It's still in the mid 40s. Bait fish haven't come in big schools yet. What we've seen is where people will fish an area in the bays here and sit there for 2-3 hours before they even catch a fish, and it's like 1 or 2 fish, and then it's done. It's not like it's been that way for a couple of years, actually. I don't know if it's just water temperature or what's been going on with the environment, but we're not seeing where we go up to an area, say on the Great Bay off a sod bank, and there are fish hanging out feeding for hours, and you're just catching fish. You're targeting them, and every 20 minutes you're reeling one in. There's been days where I got 25-30 fish in 2 or 3 hours. I got less than that this month. What we're seeing is schools of fish that are just scouting around looking, and that's what's going on. You're in an area and all of a sudden, boom, 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 a couple good fish, and then it's done because that school just came by and you were there and you caught a few of them, and they continued on because they're not finding anything to really hang out and feed on. There are some big fish that are holdovers. It's amazing, the history of striped bass, or whatever you want to call it. Their first few years of their life, they don't go into the ocean for the migration. They stay in the bays. They might head out front for some bait fish that come in, but they don't go out into the deep ocean and hit the migration at all. They basically stay in the bays, and they stay up in the rivers for the first few years of their life. That's why usually early in the spring, when you're targeting fish, there are a lot of shorties. There's a lot of 18s, 20s, 24s, if anything, and big schools of them for sure. But I tell you, over the years, we've seen a lot of big holdovers. The migration has really changed. The migration isn't as north-south as it used to be anymore. We're finding reports of fish that are just migrating east. They're just going out to the deep water. The deeper you get in the ocean, the more the temperature stays the same. After like 50, 60 feet, it stays a certain temperature. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, but just from the reports that I hear of guys targeting fish way out in December, January, February, where they're going out 30, 40, 50, 60 miles out, they're getting striped bass out there. And Jim Hutchinson Jr. Is part of a tagging program where they're tagging striped bass with these GPS monitoring tags. Yep. And they don't have a lot of them. They're very expensive. They only do like 2 or 3 of them at a time. And they're out for like a year or two. And they're finding that these fish aren't going as far south anymore. They're going out offshore. And then they're coming back inshore. And we're also seeing a lot of those fish aren't even migrating. They're just heading back into the bays and up in the rivers. 2-3 weeks ago, we had guys off the bridge here pulling in 36, 38-inch bass.
Yeah.
It's amazing, There was a couple keepers that a guy pulled in. It was like a 30 and a half, 30, just barely 31 inches. And he took it home and filleted it. And we're finding that they're eating the little baby blue crabs. I tell you, from what I've seen over the years here surf fishing, and what I see that goes on in the bay, it's like striped bass are foragers. They're nosing around in the sand looking for anything. You don't need big baits to catch big fish. there are so many bass that I've pulled off the beach here over the years where I open up their bellies and they're full of sand fleas, little calicos.
Yep.
I mean, even the ones in the bay, we have little grass shrimp in their bellies and everything like that. And these are 18, 20-pound fish, and they're eating little pieces of bait, and I've many times have caught big fish on little small baits. So even with plugs, you don't need to throw out a 6 or an 8-inch spook to catch a 40-pound bass. A 40-pound bass. I mean, when I go out targeting fish on boats, we like to go on the inlet here on the North Jetty, and we throw these little bucktails right on top of the rocks. These little half-ounce, 3/8 ounce little bucktails, and we're catching a 30-pound bass with these things. They love grabbing anything they can.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, when I caught my biggest fish 2 years ago, I was in a kayak. It was up in the Raritan River, I'll tell you exactly where it was. It was between the train bridge and the first bridge. I forget what the name of that is, but the train bridge.
Yeah.
Is in 14 feet of water, and it was on a 5-inch Z-Man soft plastic.
Yeah.
5-inch, and it was on I think it was a 1/4-ounce jig head. And that's exactly what it looked like.
I love these, man.
Yeah, although it was a different color. It was like a root beer with gold flakes in it, so it had a little bit of flash to it. And I was just bouncing it on the bottom. I thought I snagged something. I'm like, there shouldn't be a snag here. And then it moved.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay, I got something here. And it was so big, I didn't want to take it out of the water.
Wow.
And it wrapped around the back of my kayak. So the estimated length was around 50. It was definitely over 50 inches.
Jesus.
And it was probably 53 inches because it literally, I had it at my hip, and it went all the way around the back of the kayak, and its tail went around the rudder.
Jesus.
So yeah,
you don't need big baits for big fish, man. Even though they will hit them, of course. I'm not saying don't use them, but you don't need them. They hit everything.
But also like in the springtime, when I'm spring tog fishing in the backwaters, my number one bycatch is striped bass.
Yeah,
because they eat all the crabs. You drop a crab down there, and if the tog doesn't get it right away, a bass is going to take it.
We have that all the time here off the South Jetty, off the walkway by the lighthouse. We always get striped bass being pulled in, guys tog fishing all the time. And
I mean, they're right in the rocks. There's a question. There's a few questions that we'll get to, guys. I want to make sure that the folks in the chat know that. But there's one that I'll bring up real quick. Now, this is not land-based, but from Bearded Dad Fishing, what's the best time place for a newbie saltwater kayak angler to hit some stripers in New Jersey? So why don't we just, I'll fill in a little bit from my thoughts on the kayak part of it. But Dave, what would you say best time of day, let's say for April, would be a good spot, a good time for people to get out on the water, or maybe you want to go by tides, however you want to do it. But what would be the best time and type of spot that somebody would hit if you want to get them on stripers quick?
Well, I tell you, with all this cold water that we're dealing with, you want warmer water. The best way to get warmer water is outgoing tide. And you want to get down to the lower part of the outgoing tide. Now you have 6 hours of change with every tide. So I would say the bottom 3 hours of outgoing tide into the low tide area. It doesn't really matter too much time of day. I always find, the earlier the better, before first light and all that stuff, which is true. Sometimes we'll go out onto the Great Bay. My buddy Tommy and I, in the summertime, we target bass all summer. And we shoot out across the Great Bay, and we go along the sod banks before first light, and we're killing it. They go right along the land structure there. They stay in the deep water under the sod banks, and they're there feeding all night, or if they're just there all night, I don't know if they're feeding, but that's where we always see them. A lot of times when we're doing that, we're very successful, and then into first light, we're still catching bass, and then the sun comes up and they're done, and we go home. But also during the day, I got guys who are out in kayaks all the time, and they are sticklers for the tide times, and
Yeah.
they all say, the bottom 3 hours of outgoing tide is the absolute best. And look for some shallows, even if you still have some water in. The first few hours of outgoing, getting rid of some of that cold water. The sun's been out. It's getting some of the water warmer. Of course, the shallower water is going to get warmer quicker before the deep water gets. And you're going to have bass that run into that shallow water. So, if you're not catching anything along any of the deep areas along the sod banks, head your way towards some of the shallows and throw whatever you're using in the shallow areas, because they're looking for warmer water, at this point. Once the water gets up into the 50s, then you're going to hit them everywhere, But always generally, rule of thumb that I've always heard, and you could probably back this up, Rich, is the bottom few hours of that outgoing tide for sure.
Yeah, if you're in the backwaters, I would definitely echo that. You want the warmer water. There's two ways to really get it. You can get it from the shallow water if the sun's going to heat it up. There's a few ways. You can also get it from the rivers if they're warmer than the ocean, right? So it all depends on how warm was the rain that came down, and where did it come down.
Yeah.
We had a couple of years, I think 3 years ago, the brutal snowstorm right before opening day for striped bass, and it was all snow runoff coming down.
Yeah, all that fresh water, and it killed everything.
Oh, it
not
killed
but
everybody was out.
Down.
Yeah, everyone was pre-fishing, and they were catching everything, and then the snow came through, and it shut down for like 3 weeks because the water temperatures plummeted.
Yeah.
But look for, if it's a sunny day, you can look in the shallows. If it's a cold day, and there are areas like even in Great Bay that are up in the 50s, but there are also areas that are not. If you're going to fish the cold areas and it's, a mid-tide or it's maybe incoming, to Dave's point, try to get deep. And when I say deep, find deep, the deepest areas you can, because it will stay a more consistent temperature, which makes it a little bit more comfortable for them. But you always have to keep in mind, unless they're on a blitz and they're following, a school of something, they're ambush predators. So they're going to want to set up in a spot that has some current that's going to bring the food to them. They'll forage in the bottom. They'll dig up crabs if they need to. They'll eat sand fleas left and right if they're available, which is why you often, if you look, when you're surf fishing in the summer, you can sometimes see the bass behind the anglers that are out in the water. So they're actually walking past the bass and they're casting out, and you can see them up there grabbing the calico crabs and the sand fleas that are washing in the wash. You can see their fins coming up. Had a dude once, he was casting behind people and they was pissing him off, but he's catching fish. He's catching fish behind him, and he's just casting, parallel to the beach in about less than knee deep water, and they're out to their waist. And
it's the joke of why are land based fishermen casting out as far as they can, and why are boat fishermen casting in as close as they can.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what you want to do is stay in wherever the structure is. If it's out, toss out. If it's in, stay in.
Yeah.
Which is why when you fish a bulkhead, if you go for striped bass off a bulkhead, just go parallel to it.
Yeah.
Even if you're up on the bulkhead, just toss it along the bulkhead and work the bulkhead. That's where they are. That's the structure that they're hiding behind, and they're sitting next
Absolutely.
to.
We find there's a couple sod banks that we fish here late in the spring, going into summer, where we'll go out before first light and throw topwater plugs or whatever for bluefish. And the further we cast, the better for bluefish. But at 6:30, the bluefish stop biting, and we start throwing right in front of our feet, and that's where the bass are. The bass aren't out by where the bluefish are; they're right along the sod bank.
Yeah,
we're just basically just hawking underhanded,
Yeah, and bluefish are not ambush predators. Look at their tail; they got the forked tail. They're not ambushing anything. They're just blitzing everything. They just come through and just destroy.
They're aggressive.
That's not the game of a striped bass. Yep.
Rob made a good point. First light and bridges at night, and that was one of the other things I was going to say, Rich, about targeting striped bass off the island here. I love going to the bridges at night, and I wade into the water, get myself about crotch deep, which is probably waist deep for most people because I'm over 6 foot tall. And the darker it gets, the better the action gets.
Yeah.
I love it's mid island, so they say, oh, incoming, outgoing, but as long as there's current, I do really well at night. The darker it gets, the better by the bridges for sure.
Yeah, and work the shadow lines. I mean,
Yeah.
whenever you see a line, so some of the best bridges are the ones that have lights on them. So you can see the water, it's lit up, and then it's just a solid line that gets black. Now, keep in mind that the light is going in at an angle,
Mm.
right off the bridge. So the light is right over top of the bridge, and it's going out into the water,
And a lot of
and
it's being
it's going to go
reflected,
in at
so
an angle.
it's not as bright down deep,
No.
down into the water. A lot of it's being reflected, but it still is lightening up the water for sure.
Yeah. So make sure you cast all the way into the black.
Hmm.
And you're typically going to catch things. If you can set up in a spot where you cast into the light and pull into the black, that's where you're going to get it. As soon as it gets black, that's where you should expect to get it picked up, unless, and stripers are famous for this, unless they're just feeding in the lights, which they will do. They
Yeah.
definitely will do that. But oftentimes, I don't know if it's just something I think is true. But the bigger fish will sit outside the shadow lines in the dark area, and they'll just grab anything that comes by. And every once in a while, they'll charge into the lights. But that's a good way to do it. But that original question from Bearded Dad Fishing was about a kayak fisherman who's a newbie. So I have to make this comment. I will always do this. I have to make the safety comment. I'm actually one of the members of the Kayak Fishing for Beginners, which is all about safety. It's a nonprofit organization, and you should not, if you're a newbie, you need to go with somebody at this time of year. Don't go by yourself, and wear a dry suit. If you're not wearing a dry suit at this time of the year with these temperatures and you want to go fishing with me, I'm not going with you, because I don't want to be responsible when you go in the water and it's 40 degrees, it's 50 degrees, even 50 degrees. It's too cold. Because it puts me in the position that if you get dunked in the water, now I either have to save you or just watch. And I don't want to do either, because it puts me at risk of going in the water too. So make sure you have a dry suit, make sure you have a PFD, make sure you go with somebody. And once you get comfortable, fishing at night along those edges is great for kayak fishing. And one thing that you can do, let's say you don't want to go in the currents, you don't want to go near the bridges, just find some lighted docks and just go it doesn't even matter if there's current at that point. At night, striped bass will go to those lighted docks, and you just fish, just like bass fishing a dock. Flip it up under the dock and just pull it out, bring it alongside the pilings, and then you can pick some decent fish up there. I think my biggest, when we had our house in Stone Harbor, in a bay that got down to about 8, 9, maybe 10 feet at high tide, no current whatsoever where our dock was. And we pulled out, striped bass over 36 inches, plenty of times. And then there were some battleships that came through that were in the 40s that we just didn't get. But you can do that at night. At night, it's like, I don't know, it's stupid cheat code fishing as far as I'm concerned at night. That's what I would suggest. And I would go with the smaller baits. You can use the darker baits, but striped bass will hit white baits at night. You don't have to go with the darks. You can use whatever you want.
Yeah, especially by the lights.
Yeah, especially by the lights. They're going to go for anything. Even pinks. Pinks work really well.
Pinks, yellows.
Yep. Yeah, yellows I don't use so much anymore.
Really?
I don't know why.
I've done so well with yellow baits at night. I don't know why.
I used to. I just don't know why I don't. Now I just use white. And you know what else? People made fun of me for this a couple of years ago. I actually love brown bucktails. So, which was nice, because I was like, Ed, could you make me some bucktails? He's like, what colors do you want? And I said, I just want white and natural. He's like, nobody wants the brown from the bucktail, but I did. That's what I wanted. So I did really well with those.
Yeah, well, some of these bait fish are dark, and from what I've learned about white, and I I'll fish any color as long as it's white. But that's my go-to. But yeah, all bait fish, the bellies are white. So when they're looking up at bait fish, they see the white, and that's why they're hitting whites. But that's interesting. The darker color like that. I've noticed. These that NLBN company, they have they're starting to put out these short runs, and those are all dark baits. I guess those are just testers for them to see what works. So that's interesting.
My favorite bait for striped bass is a like root beer colored with gold and silver flecks in it. It's a 5-inch. And then I found some that were, I think, 7-inch. They were Z-Man. I'd prefer. I'm so disappointed when I couldn't get the, companies go out of business and they just stopped producing stuff. So I had to switch over, and I went to Z-Man for a while. I need to find a smaller company than them, although they are pretty small. I gotta go find somebody local who makes something similar. But I can't bring myself to buy those though.
And the NLBNs?
Yeah, because everyone's like, you have to have them. I'm like, now I don't want them. Yeah, I guess I'm just being contrary. It's just like everyone said, you got to get Wonder Bread patterns. I'm like, I will never fish Wonder Bread because of that.
I love the Wonder Bread only because it produced like crazy. This is my absolute favorite lure right here. This talking popper. My God, have I caught so many fish with this talking popper, this Wonder Bread. I love it.
That makes me not want it.
I hear you. But honestly, the NLBN, yeah, sure, it's a paddle tail. Paddle tail soft baits have been around forever.
Yeah.
I've noticed using them, the more fish you catch on them, the more they rip apart. They're not very hardy. I love using them, and I will always use them because I love the head. I love the hook. Those are strong damn hooks. I've had some big fish on those NLBNs, and they don't bend those hooks. It's a really good product. But I find I always have to bring extra bodies with me, like a few. If I'm on fish and I'm out there for a few hours, I'm changing that body 2 or 3 times. They get torn up.
It's funny. That's the difference between you as the thinking striped bass and me thinking fluke. Like fluke, I'll bring out bags and bags of soft plastic because they just go through them. The fluke don't, but everything else does.
Yeah.
One puffer you get on one puffer or sea robins and all the other crap back there, and it just destroys bags and bags. There was a tournament a couple of years ago. I went through 8 or 10 bags of gulp.
Yeah.
And I don't think I caught a fish I could weigh. It was the most depressing, most expensive trip.
Well, fluke have teeth, and fluke shake like a mother effer. Yeah. And I've had fluke destroy gulp when they hit the sand, and and the gulp was flying up the line, and damn it. I found that a lot more for some reason. The shrimp, I use the new penny colored shrimp, 4-inch gulp shrimps, so much over the past few years, but for some reason they seem softer than the other gulps, and they have different materials for different baits. So they have one that's like the bubblegum color; it's almost like a sponge, and then they have some that's like kind of hard, that they have the sand eels are like a harder bait, and those get grubs. The grubs are pretty solid.
And then they have some that are just like they almost fall apart when they get.
I found that with the shrimps, and it used to piss me off. I have to bring a whole big bag of shrimps with me when I was surf fishing, because when you start getting on fish, and as soon as they come out of the water, they fly up off the line, and damn it, it's all torn up. So I used to just leave mine out overnight until they were like getting a little bit more,
a little harder,
a little more solid, and they would actually stay on the hook better. I tell you, up until a few years ago, I'd go like a 2-hook high-low rig, and I'd throw a shrimp on the one, and I'd throw a swimming mullet on the other, or grub on the other. They always hit that new penny shrimp, always. But now for the past couple of years, I'm like everybody else in the world. Pink shine grubs.
Pink
But
shine. Yeah.
I, I
I
like
don't.
I like the larger hooks for fishing for fluke. A lot of people like the 3 O's and the 4 O's. I don't go nothing smaller than 6 0, and I'll even use 8 0 hooks, and I'm still catching 12-inch fluke with them. I'm not gonna hook it anymore with the larger hooks. You
Well,
know,
and people, they have huge mouths.
they
I mean,
do.
when they open their mouths, they're huge.
Yeah, it's a flat fish, but when they open their mouth, it gets round.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, and when they're going against the water, and it just opens the mouth up to a round shape like this, you'd be surprised the size baits that fluke hit. This is probably another show, and I
Yeah. It's
talked to you
another
about this
show,
the
but
other
that's okay.
day that fluke hit everything, and I'm I'm gonna do a thing this year where I'm gonna bring every plug with me when I'm fluke fishing and see what they won't hit.
Yeah. That I can't wait to see how that goes.
Yeah,
For those that don't know, Dave and I talked about this the other day, and his goal is to see exactly how many different plugs he can get a fluke on this year. And I think we're both betting it's pretty much every plug that you bring,
yeah.
we think that they'll bite.
I had someone catch fluke on a metal lip swimmer, a short,
Yeah.
fat metal lip. You
Well, you
know,
got. I can't wait to see when you get them on top water.
that's my goal
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
love top water. I
You
will
will.
if I
I'm
can
sure
never
you
fish
will.
another plug in for the rest of my life, but top water, I'll be more than happy. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know that you will catch them on top water if you try.
Yeah,
You just got to be real smart about the spot that you pick. It's just got to be a good spot.
yeah.
But you'll get them up
I
there.
think a slow moving spook will probably do it rather than like a pencil popper or something.
So I was going to say I would use a spook. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Are there any other questions we need to get to?
yeah. There's some. Nick had a good one.
I haven't been looking at it, but I see constant scrolling, and I'm like,
Yeah, I'm used to Ed doing this part of it, so it's tough. But
yeah.
Nick Devereaux, thoughts on the possibility of Bass being closed for a couple months next year, in the next years?
That's always a concern.
It's a concern.
I'm even worried about them being closed in the fall because there's going to be another meeting this summer.
Yeah, I
You
was going
know?
to say I think this happens, and I think it happens this summer. I think it's going to be similar to what they did in North Carolina for the fluke down there,
Mm-hmm.
where they just shut it down, and then you have like, I don't know if this is exactly true or not. I had cancer brain at the time when I was reading these people's posts, but I think they had like 2 or 3 days of an open season for fluke in the past year down in North Carolina, and I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. I'm not going to say whether I think it should or not, but I think that people got really scared when they really looked at the recruitment and the numbers. And I think that they're to the point where they're going to ignore the anecdotal, we had the best season of our lives last year comments from fishermen. I just think that's the case.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to look at science or anything outside of the science of the statistics that they have. And I don't know how they get their statistics, if I'm being honest with you. You know, I've seen things in the past where they assumed for certain areas I think it was for flounder, they just assumed that there were, like, they took a marina in all the marinas in an area. And they said, okay, well, it holds 700 boats. And we assume that 600 of them are going to catch their limit every day. Which doesn't make any sense because,
No.
It doesn't make sense. And I don't know if that's true or not. But I don't know that it matters to some of these people that are on these boards. And, Jim Hutchinson has I don't always agree with Jim, actually. I want to make that clear. I don't always know that I agree with his exact remedy to things, but he always comes at it from a place of honesty, and he has a good mind for these things. And I want to see where he goes on this, but I think is it going to happen? Yeah, I think it happens. I think it happens this year.
Well, the problem that I see and what I've heard from talking to many different people, including Jim, because I talk to Jim almost every month. He's on the same board as I am. Migrations are changing. Spawning areas are changing. You're not getting that big spawn up in the Chesapeake anymore. And because they're not getting all those that spawn up the Chesapeake anymore, the numbers are down. And so they think that's the only place that striped bass go. The numbers are down 28 to 31. And now they're saying moratorium and all that stuff because we're not seeing the numbers. Now, guys are out on the ocean. 2 years ago, it was right up into the surf, where all fall of 2023 was absolutely insane. The amount of striped bass that were being hit. Last year, they didn't hit in 2024, and I'm just talking the fall. They didn't hit the surface strong, but the guys out on the boats were seeing tens of thousands of bass in big schools all fall. The fish are there. They are spawning somewhere. They're just not spawning in the same areas. The migration has changed, but the studies are still in the same spots, and they're not considering all that other stuff.
Well, they're not going to change the studies.
I'm not saying there's no problem, because, from what I've seen in the spring, these past couple of years, it's kind of disturbing as to how little, what bad years we've been having, especially the past couple of years. A buddy of mine has been fishing this island area here for 35 years, and he's mostly land-based, and he had his worst spring. I mean, he's mostly targeting striped bass. He had his worst spring in the Great Bay last year. He said at the end of March, I caught a total of 28 bass. He goes, this year I caught a total of 16. And this is a guy who's out all the time. And I don't know if it's because there's a reduction in the biomass, or there's a different area that they're all going to, or just the fact that it's been cold water and there's no bait fish. It's a puzzle. And but as far as my opinion is concerned, and I hear this from a lot of guys, if you're going to shut down, if you're going to shorten the season and you want to preserve the biomass, or you preserve striped bass for the future, shut it down in the spring. Don't open it up until May. March and April is when they're spawning, when they're going up the rivers. I've seen so many posts, and it makes me absolutely sick, that guys are catching 30, 40-pound striped bass in the Delaware, and they're holding the fish up like this, and you can see the belly is full of eggs. That fish should never even be touched. They should not be allowed to target those fish. And I'm sorry if you guys don't agree with me. I'm not sure a lot of you guys are out there, and you're probably catching those fish, and you're loving it, and the pictures you're taking and all that stuff is wonderful. But I've heard over the years from experienced anglers that they won't even fish those areas. And there's another spot up in the Raritan River that I have a lot of guys who are, like I said, for many, many years, guide service, fishing guides, and people who make videos and the whole 9 yards, who are really involved in targeting striped bass. They won't even go up in those rivers in March and April because of that fact of females loaded with eggs. So if you're going to shut it down, that's when you shut it down, in my opinion. And it's not going to hurt, because then you open it up in May and you have all the way up until December to continue to target bass.
Right.
That's how I feel. And if you don't like me for it,
Hey, like I told you, I caught that 50+ incher, and it was in early season.
Yeah.
It was I think it was the very end of April when I caught it. I could actually check the exact date because of I do have it documented, but I think that was at the end of, so it was in the spring, end of April. I don't think it was in May, because I only fish striped bass while I'm waiting for fluke.
Yeah.
So, and the backwater to really get going.
Yeah.
And I will pre-fish fluke, and go for weak fish and everything at the same time. But and NYC Fish Chaser says New York will shut it down. I have no doubt New York will shut it down no matter what.
Yeah.
I just think New York is just, I don't know, man. New York just doesn't have their shit together. In any sense of the word, when it comes to anything fishing related. And that's not saying that again, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. I'm just saying they just do stuff. And then there's a lot of stuff that they don't ever do. Like their artificial reef system is the worst in the world. I mean, it's been getting better, but the fact that we have off of just any one small town in New Jersey, like 3 times what they have off of like their biggest cities, it's a disgrace. And half of our stuff, the subway cars all came from New York, right? So all this structure that we have on these reefs came from New York. These poor guys up there are stuck fishing like little boulders and, boulder fields and stuff, but they could have some really good stuff off the coast. So wouldn't be surprised if they shut it down. That's kind of where I am. I'm thinking that it'll get shut down later this year. And
me personally, I'm a lucky man. I'm retired and I can fish 200-300 days a year if I want. I'm not too concerned with keepers. I'd rather catch 10, 15, 25-inch fish than 1 40-inch fish. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like catching 40-inch fish, but I like the activity. I like the action. I'd like to just keep plugging and catching fish and releasing them, and I just love that whole activity. Yeah. There are guys out there, the guys who are still working 5-6 days a week. They might get a month, 1 day a month, or a weekend every couple weeks. Those are the guys who want their keepers, and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with people taking home keepers, but I just love targeting fish. I'll if I never bring a keeper home all year, it doesn't bother me. I just love fishing.
Yeah. I'm pretty well with you. For striped bass, I won't keep it unless it's going to die. And for fluke, I do like to keep fluke. I do like to.
I'll destroy fluke. I'll bring them all home.
Yeah, tog. I'll throw all the tog back. Yeah. I may keep one. If it's blown out, I'll keep it definitely. But I can't see myself keeping a tog just because it's a big tog. Look, if it's a world record, maybe I do. I don't know. I've never been in that position, but tog is a concern to me as far as how healthy that stock's going to be, because that to me feels like it's taken a bad turn.
And you got to throw back all the females. That's all there is to it.
I don't keep females at all.
None of them.
Again, unless they're blown out and they're going to die anyway. I'm not the biggest fan of keeping females at all. It just doesn't make sense to me. So we're way past where we were going to go, Dave.
Oh, really? I could talk all night.
I know, me too. And
I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. If they were a lot.
Well, we got to a lot of them because there were some duplicates in there, asking similar things. But it just means, hey, come back on, come back on sometime and let's go more into it. Let's both get out on the water so we can come back and share some of our personal experiences. I will say, for those that are watching and listening right now, Heaven and Elle is coming up on an episode. So we're going to get to talk with her about her on the water escapades. And man, I've been looking forward to talking to her again for a while. And I'm sure then we'll transition to tog, because that's one of her things is tog. Yeah. Tog and flounder with the cute little mouths, the winter flounder.
Yeah. Oh, the winter. Yeah.
Yeah, she likes because the mouths are so little and so cute.
That's funny.
I'll never forget when she said that.
They're not targeted as much as they used to be in the past, and it's not that you don't hear much about guys going out for winter flounder anymore. Not because they're not there; they're just, I don't know why people just aren't targeting them anymore. Because I know a couple guys here on the island that have been targeting them for the past month or two, and they're just killing it, and they're getting some really nice ones.
Yeah, you have to know how to do it, though, right? I mean, it's different. You don't just go out and go for winter flounder. You got to go out with the right gear, because, again, they have these tiny mouths, and you have to know exactly what you're going to do to get them. People use the chum bags on the bottom. There are a lot of different techniques for it, but they're a lot of fun. I mean, they're flounder. They fight, and they're not very big, but you're also not using big gear either.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that again too, probably later in the year. I don't remember when they go out of season, but I think it's pretty soon.
Right.
I haven't targeted them in in a few years. Again, I didn't target anything last year, but all right. So Heaven L is going to be coming up in a future episode. Dave, thank you again for coming on. Everyone, don't forget the LBI Spring Derby is somewhere where you want to go. Great prizes, great time. It's a great way to support fishing, get other people to sign up for it. The information is on the YouTube description and in the podcast description. And
and the best striped bass fishing on LBI is in the spring. You know, we don't get as strong here in the fall, even though we do very well here in the fall. But for some reason, spring surf fishing for bass is insane here in the island. So you know, even if you want to come here for a weekend to check it out, drop $20 in one of the shops, and you might get $1,000 fish. You know.
Hey. If I make it down to LBI, I'm definitely dropping my $20 in, whether I catch something or not.
Yeah, what's $20 for the sake of just the chance of getting a few $100, man? Exactly.
May as well do it. So, all right, everyone, thanks for tuning in again. We'll be back next Monday, and until next time, get out there, get on the water, get some tight lines.